Coincidentally, the shoe size can only fit one friggin' woman in the entire world, and thank God it just happened to be the one you fell in love with. Yeah, I guess that is a little screwed up. As the Disney films go, especially the ones that sort of use the traditional princessy formula, this one's okay. It's got some really good moments, some really good song sequences, and like I said, a really cool villain. But a lot of it also seems like filler. Just the animals sort of walking around, being goofy, having fun, when really you could have been spending that time developing some of the other characters. Like, oh, I don't know, again, the friggin' prince! But the artwork is pretty impressive too. Watching it again, I really like the scale that they give a lot of these houses and castles. They actually do make it seem rather massive. And this is before widescreen. It's the basic return to the classic fairy tale, and it does it pretty decently. And any problems it does have story-wise, I think you can attribute to just the time period and, well, the fact that it is a fairy tale. Well, a lot of them were just sort of written this way. I think it holds up okay. Not one of my personal favorites, but it's definitely pretty good. Whenever people hear the title Alice in Wonderland, usually the first thing they think of is the Disney version. And yeah, actually that's not such a bad version to think of. The story about a young girl who finds herself trapped in a very strange, mysterious land is much more based on the journey than finding twists or turns. The character of Alice is a bit of a blank slate. She's the normal person that's supposed to play off all the weird, strange things that she comes across. It plays very much like a road trip movie. You come across something strange, you have an encounter with it, and then you move on to the next strange thing. Like I said, the focus is not the twists and turns, but all the oddities that she comes across. It's like Dante's Inferno, it's more a study of what you're seeing than what you're experiencing. But with that said, the girl that got to play Alice is actually pretty good. Her name's Catherine Beaumont, and she does a really good job actually giving some character to this person. The dialogue from Alice in Wonderland is not easy to recite, and it's not easy to make casual. But she does a pretty good job. She's curious, she's polite, she's nice, but can be pushed to her limits. She tries to join in the fun, but often just finds herself too frustrated. And she's also very logical, which makes a lot of sense in a story like this because this is a world where logic almost has no place.
He went that way.
Who did?
The White Rabbit.
He did?
He did what?
Went that way.
Who did?
The White Rabbit.
What rabbit?
But didn't you just say? Oh dear.
Can you stand on your head?
My favorite characters are your favorite characters. I love the Mad Hatter, I love the March Hare, I love the Cheshire Cat. They're all absolutely crazy, but at the same time I think the fun with them is that you never know if they're threatening or not. Their mood swings are just so fast and you never know if something really dangerous is going to happen or if they're just playing along. Half the time I don't even think they know.
You may have noticed that I'm not all there myself.
The Queen is one of my favorite funny villains. Actually, watching her again, I realized I actually did take a lot of the nostalgia critic from this character. Just how quickly she can turn from calm and collected to just screaming like a little child. I really do love pathetic, whiny brats in a grown-up body, but somehow have a ton of power. And I love watching Alice trying to figure out what's the right thing to say and right thing to do because she knows that any second her head could be gone. And actually, that's a pretty dark aspect to the story, isn't it? How many characters do actually get their heads chopped off in this movie? Just because they don't show it doesn't mean it isn't happening. It's pretty grim. Wonderland itself is very different from other interpretations. It doesn't have a bright, colorful background. It's very black. Most of the backgrounds are black. But that's always great because when color does come in, it's always bright, it's always clashing, and it always pops. Some people have problems that they cut out too much from the original books, and, well, it's a Disney film, and an anime one at that. You sort of have to get whatever you're given. I will say, with all the forced Disney sequels out there, how come this never got one? There is literally a sequel book to Alice in Wonderland. Why didn't they just change things around a bit and start putting in some of the other characters? Like the Knight, the Turtle, the Griffin. There's a ton of areas you could go with this. But oh well. What I do like about Alice in Wonderland is that it does make the transition into movie form. That's the trap I think a lot of other movie versions fall into, is that they try to follow the book a little too closely. Ironically, with the Tim Burton one, I don't think they followed it enough, but I've complained about that enough before. Alice in Wonderland is creative, it looks great, it's a wonderful journey movie, and the majority of it works because the main character is just so likable. I have very few complaints about it, except honestly, I would have liked to have seen more. but I guess that's a good complaint to have. If you're looking for a movie that's big on story, surprises, and character development, this is probably not the place to look. But I think most people going into Alice in Wonderland know what they're gonna get. And in my opinion, this is one of the better versions. I always said that Peter Pan was sort of like every little boy's fantasy. I mean, think about it. You got pirates, you got flying, you got Indians, you got faraway lands, you got mermaids. If somehow they worked in cowboys and spacemen, this movie would be set. And for what the story is, Disney does it pretty well. They of course put some changes here and there, but they still get the characteristics of these people down really great. Pan himself is very cocky and sure of himself, and I have to admit he is a little bit a product of the times. Something about that voice and the way he looks, you can definitely tell it was done in the 50s.
Of course. That's why I like him. I tell him to the Lost Boys.
But he never uses any current catchphrases or anything. Wendy, once again, is portrayed by Catherine Beaumont. Again, sort of taking your bland, typical innocent and turning into something really entertaining.
She's a wonderful nurse, although Father says...
Girls talk too much.
Yes, girls talk to... Oh.
Well, get on with it, girl.
My name is Wendy. Wendy Mora Angela Dahl.
Wendy's enough.
Oh.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't use her in more films after this. You got John the geek and Michael the cute innocent, and they all go off on an adventure to Never Never Land, where they never have to grow up. The Lost Boys are typical delinquents, and the pirates are typical pirates, but what I really love about this movie is Captain Hook. Again, this is sort of the Captain Hook most people think of when they think of Peter Pan. Threatening, but he's also really, really funny. Smee as well is sort of the definitive Smee. He wants to be mean-spirited, but he's just too bumbling and nice. Plus, when you put the two of them together with the crocodile, dude, this is some of the best slapstick you'll ever see. The timing, the pacing, the expressions, it kills me every single time I watch these scenes. The romance between Wendy and Peter is just perfect. It's not overdone, they never actually share a kiss on screen. It's very much done like how real little kids fall in love. Girl often wants it more and the boy doesn't know what the hell to think of it. Tinkerbell is a nice, bitchy character that also gets her redemption at the end. And the Indians, they're definitely an archetype of what we thought Native Americans were at that point. But I don't know, it's sort of like the Black Crows from Dumbo. I never really found them that insulting. I thought they were cool. That song, What Makes the Red Man Red? I love that song. It still sticks in my head.
What made the red man red? What made the red man red?
Peter Pan seems to get the childlike adventure down pretty well. For little kids, it's pretty gender neutral. The girls can get into the romance and the mermaids and the flying and such, while the boys can get into the sword fighting, the pirates, and all that good stuff. The energy is great, the imagination is great, it's just a good old-fashioned fun kids movie. It's definitely one of Disney's most biggest trademarks for a reason. Lady and the Tramp was one of the first movies I ever saw in theaters, so naturally I loved it when I was a little kid. The story of an upper-class female dog that comes across a low-down, scroungy male dog is about as typical as it gets. At first they don't like each other, but a few situations force them together, and as they get to hang out more, they really decide that they're meant for each other. There's some differences to this usual story that I like the fact that I enjoy when they first see each other, it's not love at first sight like so many other Disney films. If anything, he just sees her in passing and just strikes up a conversation. It's not even a pleasant conversation. He's talking about how a baby's gonna take over her life and that she's never gonna be the center of attention anymore. And then he just leaves. Honestly, if you didn't know the story going in, you probably wouldn't have guessed they'd be together by the end. I sort of like that. There's also a bunch of clever little touches too, like I enjoy how the dogs interpret everything. Like how the main character thinks that the name of her owners are Jim Dear and Darling. Simply because that's what they call each other all the time.
Oh, darling.
In the kitchen, Jim dear.
As Disney films go, it's cute. Nothing that spectacular. It keeps your interest, you want to know what's going to happen, but there's no real big surprises or any phenomenal bits of animation or, well, just anything that really stands out that much. But for what it is, it's a decent film. It did give us that great Siamese song, though. I don't know, is that racist? Now, too? I'm not sure. But it's the one song everybody hums when they're leaving the theater, so that's gotta count for something.
We are Siamese, if you please. We are Siamese, if you don't please.
It is nice that they don't go for a straight-up villain in the movie or any of those forced story cliches. Well, except maybe one or two. But they're pretty downplayed. The movie is pretty much just a series of moments. But they're nice moments, and I don't recall them ever being really boring. So overall, I think it's okay. I don't think it's one I'll be watching over and over like the other Disney films, but it holds up decent. If you're a dog lover, or if even not, check it out. It's worth an hour and a half of your time.
On this lovely
Sleeping Beauty. This movie always astounds me in what a colossal epic and what a colossal mess it is, both at the same time. First, let's look at the good stuff. The artwork, for example, is a very different take for Disney. The backgrounds never look three-dimensional, but they're not supposed to. It's supposed to be very much like tapestry work, or like paintings you'd see in a medieval castle. It was a very different approach, and it looks very nice, though I guess at times it can be a little distracting for some viewers. I personally don't mind, though. Let's also look at the side characters. The fairies are great. They have to hide the Princess Aurora for 16 years to keep her away from the evil of Maleficent, who again is friggin' great. I mean, one of the best villains. Top 3 easily. It's a villain that's evolved almost entirely from the voice acting and the animation. Because to be fair, her motivation's not very strong. She gets snubbed at a party, that's it. But the extremes she'll go to get revenge, now that's friggin' awesome.
Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die.
She's classy, she's despicable, she's quiet, she's loud, she's subtle, she's over the top. She's everything you want in a villain. She can wave her hand to make something move, or she can turn into a fire-breathing dragon. Friggin' awesome. The music is also fantastic, taken from one of the best-known ballets under the same name. It leads to some memorable songs as well as some great climax music. In fact, the climax itself is one of Disney's best. The energy, the animation, everything that goes into it is just fiery blaze. It's always the best part of the movie every time I watch it. Now let's get to the stuff that doesn't work, like the main characters. Good God, are they boring. When I think of the stereotypical boring princess, this is who I think of. She does nothing, she has little to no character, she just sort of sings and looks pretty. I don't even think she's that pretty. But how about the prince? He's the dashing hero in the end. Surely he must be interesting, right? Actually, he's even more boring. Do you realize that the last line he says in this movie is "Goodbye, father," and that's about halfway through? After that, he doesn't get a line. He just runs around swinging his sword. That's it. At least she has an excuse. She's put to sleep for the second half. Him? God, couldn't we get a grunt or an oof or something? There's also a lot of filler in this movie, and maybe that's one of the reasons why the main characters are so bland. I think this movie really liked its side characters much more. Most of the time is spent with the fairies, the villains, the two kings. That really doesn't lead to anything. So really, it's a very unbalanced film. But again, I guess like most Disney films, the stuff that works well works really, really well. The villain is great. The fairies are great. The animation is great. That ending fight scene is just friggin' fantastic. So it's kind of hard to judge this movie, seeing how not only does it have some good things, but it has some of the best of any of the Disney films. But it goes beyond just typical visuals. It actually does have some very good characters, even if they are the side characters. For that, I think it holds up for several viewings. I did see this film quite a few times growing up, and I did like it every time. There's just several scenes I liked a lot more than others. But they are good scenes and they are good characters. So, from a storytelling point of view, the film probably doesn't work. But just from a selfish point of view, in terms of seeing something that you've never seen before or something that's done really, really well, there's a lot of things to enjoy. Even if it turns out on the whole you don't like the film, I still think it's worth looking at. The stuff that's impressive is still really impressive. I know I'm not done watching it, and I'm sure 1 or 2 more views are not far in my future. Well, I hope you like Dalmatians, or you're really not gonna like this movie. Well, okay, I shouldn't be that mean to it, but let's just be honest. It's a bunch of Dalmatians. They walk around, they look cute, they talk, they bark, I don't know, just do cutesy stuff. If you like that, you're gonna love this film. If not, it's a bit of a bore. I guess there are a few things that stand out about it, like the villain Cruella de Vil, which, ever since the live-action version, has become one of the most infamous villains of all time. And she is a lot of fun, it's just a great design. Sort of this weak, fragile woman under this gigantic, hairy, monstrous fur coat. She's both glamorous and hideous at the same time, and actually is a pretty cool design. And the character's a lot of fun too, constantly screaming, constantly yelling, but always trying to look fabulous while doing it. Her motivation is to get as many Dalmatian puppies as she can to make a bajillion fur coats. And once 15 puppies of our main characters get abducted, which somehow makes the front pages for some reason, the search is on to go and find them. The rest of the characters are not bad, they're just kind of phoned in. The husband and wife are a typical nice husband and wife. The side characters are typical sort of dopey side characters. I think the only one I ever really got into was the